Hi everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. You guys have been loving my easy bread loaf recipes and today I have a brand new version for you. I'll be making my raspberry pistachio bread with raspberry glaze. This bread is so incredibly moist, tender and flavorful and it's super easy to put together. I'm going to get started with a buttermilk and Greek yogurt batter, add in some diced pistachios, some fresh raspberries, and then for the finished bread I'm going to add a raspberry glaze made with freeze-dried raspberries. It just takes this bread up another notch. It makes it even more incredibly delicious. Now for the full list of ingredients and the written instructions, make sure to head on down that video description box and follow a link over to my website. I'll have the recipe up with metric measurements as well. Let's get started. I'm going to show you how to make this easy bread. I'm preheating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and for today's recipe you can use an 8.5 or 9-inch loaf pan. I've sprayed the sides of this one with some baking spray and I've aligned it with parchment paper. These parchment paper tabs will make it super easy to kind of just lift the bread right out of the loaf pan. We'll set that aside for now and we can get started with the wet ingredients first. We'll need half a cup of Greek yogurt. I'll drop that into a large mixing bowl. And half a cup of buttermilk, and the sour buttermilk and that tart Greek yogurt are what's going to activate our baking soda and make the bread extra fluffy. Next, add in 2 large eggs, and I've brought these up to room temperature. Half a cup of melted unsalted butter, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 3/4 cups of white granulated sugar. I'll use my mixer and beat this all together for a few minutes until the eggs are well beaten. For my dry ingredients, I have 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. To that, I'm going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Toss that all together. Next, I'll grab a fine mesh strainer and sift the dry ingredients into the batter. And you always want to do this to ensure you don't get any clumps of dry ingredients. And it really just takes a few seconds. There's almost always a little clump of something at the bottom of my sifter. And then I'll use my mixer to combine the dry and wet ingredients together just until I have a smooth and clump-free batter. You don't want to overmix at this step. My bread loaf batter is all done and ready to go, and now let's talk about the fillings. So today I'm going to be using some fresh raspberries. You can also use frozen ones. Just make sure to thaw them out beforehand and then drain off any liquids. And I'll be using 1 cup of salted roasted pistachios. Now I love to use a salted pistachio versus like an unsalted or raw, because that combined with the sweetness of the bread is just a match made in heaven. You guys are going to love the flavor combination. What I did is I pulsed the pistachios through a food processor, and I had some larger chunks left that I'm going to use for topping the bread, and then I have more finely ground pistachios that I'm going to add into the batter. I'll be adding approximately 3/4 cups of these finely pulsed or ground pistachios, and I'll fold them into the batter. And then to get a more even spread of raspberries throughout the loaf, I'm actually going to layer the batter with the fresh raspberries. So add a few spoonfuls of the batter into the bottom of the pan. Add some of those raspberries. And then repeat this process a few times. And add a few more raspberries on top. And we'll sprinkle some more of the pistachios. My raspberry pistachio bread loaf is ready for the oven. It's going to bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 55 to 60 minutes or until a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. Once it's done baking, I'm going to use these parchment paper tabs to lift the loaf out of the pan and onto a wire rack to cool completely. And then while this is cooling, I'm going to show you how to make a really simple raspberry glaze using some freeze-dried raspberries. I have about a cup of confectioner's sugar. I'm going to add in a few tablespoons of milk. You can also use cream. And I have some crushed freeze-dried raspberries. I get these at Trader Joe's. I'm going to add in a little bit and whisk those in. Super easy. And it's as easy as grabbing a spoon and drizzling the glaze over the top. And that's it. This bread is going to be ready to be enjoyed. All right, let's cut into this bread to see what it looks like on the inside. I'm going to cut off this very edge piece. It's a little caramelized, so I'm going to get rid of this. We can enjoy the bread on the inside. Check out the inside here. It's dotted with fresh raspberries. You have a little bit of that greenish olive color from the pistachios in the batter. This is going to be incredible. And I'm loving the texture of this bread. It's so moist yet fluffy. This is going to taste so great with a cup of coffee. And that's it for my easy raspberry pistachio bread loaf. This turned out incredible. I love the raspberry glaze on top because it has so much incredible raspberry flavor, and then the little crunchy pistachio bits. You can also garnish it with more fresh raspberries. You guys are going to love this recipe. For the full list of ingredients and the instructions, make sure to head on down that video description box and follow the link over to my website. I also include metric measurements for all of my recipes for those of you guys who are not in the United States. Time to dig in and enjoy. I have a cup of tea on the side as well. This looks so incredible. I love the raspberries dotted on the inside as well. This looks incredible. Now this is what I call delicious. This bread is so incredibly moist and tender, just kind of melts into your mouth, and then you get like crunchy bits of pistachio and fruity and tart pieces of raspberry, and then that raspberry glaze on the top adds even more flavor. This is phenomenal. Definitely going to be on the top, on my top favorite list. Grab a little bit of my tea. You can also have it with some coffee in the morning. This can be so great for breakfast. Just perfection. Everything about this recipe is so easy. You can have it in the oven and ready to go in like 15 minutes, and then just add the glaze on the top and you're all done. It's such an easy recipe. It's ridiculous. And the flavors here are just phenomenal. You're going to love every single bite. Don't forget to head on down the video description box for the recipe link. And if you did enjoy this video, give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. I always appreciate you guys for watching and supporting my channel, and I'll see you next time with a new recipe.